If you're an American conservative, you know that the societal values we hold sacred are under attack. They are hanging in the balance. How can you protect those values? By staying informed. The Closing Argument will deliver news and supporting evidence you need to support and defend those values. Here's Paul Smith.
Good morning. This is Paul Smith, your host of The Closing Argument. In this podcast, we discuss some of the important but controversial moral, political, and legal issues that affect us and our families today. I have to give this warning that some of the things we discuss are not politically correct, and they may offend some of the audience, but we have to discuss them. This discussion is needed to help establish the truth, to preserve our liberties, and to let the world know that there are many people who challenge some of the views that are gaining acceptance in our schools, our media, and our government. Today, we're going to talk about whether or not there's a consensus among scientists that humans are causing catastrophic global warming and catastrophic climate change. This is a fascinating side issue because I have, and maybe you have heard, many people use the number 97% consensus. It's interesting that there are 3 studies that were done within the last 10 or 15 years that conclude that 97% of the scientists confirm and agree that humans are causing catastrophic climate change. When I first heard that, I said, you gotta be kidding. Not only do they say there's a consensus, but a 97% consensus, and 3 different studies come up with basically the same number. I mean, red flags come up all over the place. That's just incredible. And one of the reasons is in 2008, November of 2008, just prior to Barack Obama taking office, the Democrats controlled the House by a margin of 232 Democrats over 202 Republicans. So they had a House committee that issued a report stating and declaring that humans were causing this catastrophic climate change. Interestingly, though, in December, just a month later, a Senate committee issued its own report, which has now been called the Minority Report, which disputed that. And the Senate report by the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee took contributions from over 650 scientists, and they refuted and disputed the claims of the House report, was that it was the worst scientific scandal in history. That's according to Japanese scientist Kiminori Itoa, an award-winning PhD environmental physical chemist. Dr. Lloyd Phillip said that the IPCC distorted the science in support of that assertion. Dr. William Briggs, who serves on the American Meteorological Society, said that the IPCC's assertion of consensus is really outrageous and unethical. And Dr. Will Happer, professor of the Department of Physics at Princeton University and former director of energy research at the Department of Energy, he said that current alarm over carbon dioxide is mistaken. Fears about man-made global warming are unwarranted and are not based upon good science. Well, I was aware of this, so the 97% consensus claim just made absolutely no sense. So what I'm going to talk about today is I want to tell you about 4 different studies that the alarmists use that they say confirm this consensus claim. And those studies have been reviewed and basically refuted. I want to tell you about them. The studies, one is by a woman named Naomi Oreskes. There's another study by Duran and Zimmerman, a third study by a man named Anderegg, and a 4th study by John Cook. I want to talk about each of these briefly. A review of these studies shows that not only is the the climate change, that humans are causing catastrophic climate change, not only is that a hoax, but the consensus claim is a hoax within a hoax. In 2015, towards the end of the Obama administration, the NASA website claimed that 97% of the scientists agree that humans are causing catastrophic global warming. So in 2016, a scientist named Mr. Idso, and Idso did a study of these four studies that I told you about. And here were his findings. First, in 2004, Naomi Oreskes asserted in her report that humans were causing catastrophic climate change and that there was a large consensus of scientists that concurred with this. So she was at least kind of general. But when Idso reviewed that, he said that her literature inexplicably overlooked hundreds of articles by prominent global warming skeptics, including John Christie, Sherwood Idso, Craig Lindzen, and Patrick Michaels, all of which disputed this. She just totally ignored them. And so he found fault in her conclusion. A second study published in 2009 by Duran and Zimmerman claimed that 97% of the climate scientists agree with the conclusion that humans were causing worldwide global warming. But Idso said their database was fatally flawed. They cherry-picked the scientists in their study, and they excluded thousands of scientists, including solar scientists, physicists, meteorologists, and astronomers who disagreed. It also says that the questions they used in their study were also flawed. Idso concluded that only 5% of the respondents to Duran and Zimmerman were self-identified as climate scientists. So he disputed that report. Now, a third study that was produced in 2010 by a man named Anderegg was similarly flawed. And interestingly, Anderegg also stated that 97 to 98% of the climate researchers most actively publishing supported the anthropogenic global warming claim. But Idso said that Anderegg simply counted the number of articles he found on the internet, and that he did not have a representative database for his conclusions. Finally, the 2013 study by Australian blogger John Cook also concluded that 97% of scientists support the anthropogenic global warming claim. But Idso found that only 1% of the 4,000 some papers examined by Cook even expressed an opinion on the question, let alone an opinion supporting anthropogenic global warming. The bottom line is none of these studies had a correct and valid conclusion. They were bogus studies. They were bad science. They should be a disgrace to anyone who uses them to support their beliefs. Basically, there is no 97% consensus on human-caused global warming. None of these studies indicate any agreement with a catastrophic view of human-caused global warming. In 2014, a group called Friends of Science reviewed all of these studies, and they pointed out that that consensus claim is merely a social proof of a powerful psychological motivator intended to make the public comply with the herd. He said they pointed out that 97% of the authors agree that human-caused CO2 has contributed to an increase in greenhouse gases and global warming. They just don't agree that it is a dominant force. Now, Dr. Sangster did a study of the data and studies that are out there, and he reported that a man named Leggett and some associates did a study in 2014 that demonstrated that only 0.5% of the abstracts of basically almost 12,000 scientific papers on climate-related topics published over the last 20 years explicitly stated an opinion that supports the IPCC position of a consensus. That's a long way from 97%. So when President Biden says that the science is settled, that humans are causing climate change, that the planet is speeding towards irreversible damage, and that the nation has waited too long to implement the Green New Deal, he's wrong on all counts. In 2008, 31,478 scientists signed on to a report about climate change matters, including 9,000 PhDs. And this was what was published in their joint statement. There is no scientific evidence that the human release of carbon dioxide, methane, or other greenhouse gases is causing or will in the foreseeable future cause catastrophic heating of the Earth's atmosphere and disruption of the Earth's climate. Moreover, there is substantial scientific evidence that increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide produce many beneficial effects upon natural plant and animal environments. One other person I would refer to who has commented on this, and this is a rather enlightening development, is Dr. Judith Curry, who is former chair of the School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at Georgia Tech. And she initially was on board with the IPCC and with its assertion of a consensus among scientists. But some things happened, and in 2009, she changed her views and has now separated herself from the IPCC. Here are some things that she said. Prior to 2009, I felt that supporting the IPCC consensus on climate change was the responsible thing to do. I bought into their argument. But I came to the growing realization that I had fallen into the trap of groupthink. I had accepted the consensus based on second-order evidence, the assertion that a consensus existed. I began making independent assessments of the topic, and then I changed my view. She said, it is true that surface temperatures have increased overall since 1880, but that she believes that adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere does have a warming effect on the planet. But she says, however, there is considerable uncertainty and disagreement about the most consequential issues, whether the warming has been dominated by humans versus natural variability. The truth is, we simply don't know if climate change is a problem that needs to be addressed. The best available evidence points in a different direction. The human impact on climate is small relative to natural variability, perhaps too small to be measured. Anyway, I hope that discussion is a little bit helpful because the consensus claim is just not supported by science. It's merely a propaganda technique to get people to move on, to avoid debate. And it is those who would refer to those studies that I cited as support for the consensus claim ought to be embarrassed. Those studies have been totally debunked. I hope this discussion is helpful to you. Thanks for joining us. Remember, the liberties that we enjoy in America can be maintained only when its citizens are moral and informed participants in the democratic process. The closing argument will help you do this. And I invite you to check out my book, The Climate Change Hoax Argument. You can find out about it and where to get it at my website, www.cpaulsmith.com. Thank you very much. See you next time.